Let me tell you something strange about silence in the digital age. We live in a time where visibility feels like existence itself. Every thought, every coffee, every sunrise becomes a post. We curate our lives into fragments of performance, highlights that shape how others perceive us. Yet in this endless noise, there are people who choose something radically different. They don't post, they don't announce. They live quietly, almost invisibly, in a world obsessed with attention. Maybe you know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And the question that often lingers is why? Why would someone stay silent in an age where expression equals relevance? The easy assumption is that they're introverted, private, or simply uninterested. But beneath that stillness lies something much deeper, an entire psychology that reveals. In a culture built on oversharing, silence becomes a kind of resistance. It's not an absence of voice, it's control. The decision not to post is, for many, an act of ownership over their reality. Social media has quietly trained us to translate our worth into visibility, to measure meaning in likes and metrics. Every post becomes a small negotiation with identity. This is who I am. Do you approve? But those who choose not to play this game reclaim something essential: autonomy. They decide what remains unseen. They define themselves without needing reflection from others. Psychologists have found that people who refrain from constant posting often exhibit higher levels of self-regulation, introspection, and emotional independence. Their confidence doesn't need an audience. And perhaps most importantly, they experience life for themselves. When you stop documenting moments, you start living them. You stop narrating your existence through captions and begin feeling it directly. Silence, then, is not withdrawal. It's an intentional pause in a world addicted to noise. It's the refusal to turn every moment into a performance. This is where a subtle paradox begins to emerge. The quieter you are online, the more clearly you start to hear yourself. To choose invisibility is, in some ways, to rebel. In a culture that equates exposure with relevance, not posting becomes an act of self-preservation. People who stop sharing often describe it as a relief, like stepping backstage after performing too long under bright lights. For many, it begins with exhaustion, the fatigue of constant display, the quiet anxiety of needing to appear happy, successful, fulfilled. At first, posting feels like connection, but over time it morphs into performance, and one day something shifts. The applause starts to feel hollow. The smile in the photo doesn't feel real, so they stop. No grand announcement, no farewell post, just a gentle vanishing. In psychology, there's a concept called psychological ownership, the feeling that a moment, a memory, or an experience belongs to you. When you post it, you share that ownership with the world. It becomes subject to judgment, distortion, or even envy. Many people who don't post have learned this instinctively. The more you protect your experiences from public consumption, the more sacred they remain. Silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where authenticity can breathe again. Not because they hate technology, but because they've realized that intimacy cannot survive constant exposure. And yet, silence doesn't mean disconnection. It means choosing the depth of connection over its display. Still, not every silence is born from peace. For some, it grows from fear of judgment, rejection, or simply not fitting the social narrative. Psychologists call this self-presentational pressure, the constant awareness of being watched. Even a simple post becomes a calculated act, filtered through invisible expectations. This pressure quietly reshapes how we relate to ourselves. It breeds anxiety, perfectionism, and self-consciousness. The more you post, the more your identity depends on how it's received. Over time, your sense of self starts to fracture, 1,000 versions of who you think you should be. That's why some people step away, not because they don't care, but because they care too much. They crave something real. Conversation without an audience. Connection without performance. Ironically, the people who seem silent online often have the loudest inner worlds. They're observers. They notice details others overlook. They're thinking, processing, feeling deeply. When they choose silence, it's not absence, it's presence. Because not everything meaningful is meant to be witnessed. Some forms of growth, pain, and transformation are too intimate for the feed. And maybe that's the quiet secret of those who don't post. They understand that real life doesn't need proof. Before we go on, if this video is helping you see social media and yourself in a new light, consider sharing it with someone who might need this perspective too. And if you'd like to support the kind of deep, reflective content we create here, you can click the thanks button below. Your support truly makes a difference. Now let's continue. The psychology behind not posting runs deeper than habit. It's neurological. Every time we share something and receive likes or comments, our brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter linked to reward and addiction. Over time, we become conditioned to seek that validation loop, equating visibility with worth. But people who resist that cycle demonstrate something powerful: discipline. They've built what psychologists call an internal locus of control, the belief that happiness and self-worth come from within, not from others' reactions. By choosing not to post, they are, in a sense, detoxing from the dopamine economy. Studies show that individuals who limit their social media activity often experience higher levels of emotional stability and self-acceptance. Their sense of identity solidifies, no longer bending to fit the algorithmic mirror. Without the constant feedback loop, they start rediscovering the world and themselves in its unedited form. Colors seem richer, time slows down, conversations deepen. Because when you stop thinking in captions, you start thinking in presence. When someone stops posting, what they often find is not loneliness but peace. They begin noticing who remembers them without updates, who checks in without reminders, who truly cares without a feed to prompt it. Connection becomes genuine again, quiet, direct, unperformed. Privacy turns into intimacy, solitude turns into clarity, and life, once curated and cropped, expands beyond the frame. This doesn't mean they reject technology or human connection. It means they've learned to protect the sacredness of experience, to be fully alive without constantly proving it. And perhaps that's what we all long for deep down, to be enough, even when unseen. Maybe the people who don't post aren't running away from the world. Maybe they're simply returning to it. Because in a culture obsessed with performance, silence isn't emptiness. It's truth. It's the quiet reminder that we were never meant to be content. We were meant to be human.